Regular meeting of the Administration and Legal Committee to order. Roll call, please. I guess I'll do the roll call. Commissioner Glantz? Or you're not on the committee?
No.
Present.
Just us two.
Mike Panito, present.
Mike Mangan, present.
Cindy Berg, present.
And the attorney, can you state your name and tell us if you're present or not?
Pat Connolly, present.
Very good. The first item of business is to consider approval of the minutes of the Special Administration and Legal Committee meeting held on October 24th, 2017.
So moved.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
The next item on the agenda is discussion of ethics codes revision. This matter is on the agenda for a couple reasons. I know we've had a deluge of ethics complaints. Some of them are pretty non-specific, vague in general, making it to the point that it's hard to tell if anything even happened and whether or not to investigate it. I know that the clerk's office has asked that we look at it. I personally am a little bit concerned about the expense of the last ethics investigation. I checked before the meeting, it was $9,000 for that. And I think, although I like some of the language in our code on how to get things rolling and keep it fair and, investigate anything and anything and anyone the, complaint alleges, I think based on the expense of this thing, we have to have some kind of threshold mechanism to at least do a laugh test to see if it goes on to the next level. Does anybody have any thoughts, or you want to go right to the attorney on that, or?
I had a chance to look at two examples that they had given.
Yeah.
One being Homewood, and had a chance to go through them, and there's some logic to the way they've laid them out. So, a couple things that I view is that first and foremost, you have to look at it and see if it was done right. So, was the information that was submitted correct? Was the timing on the submission within the time frame that was required? Based on what we have today and or what we would have in the new ethics if we redid it. The other thing was there was some good language in one of the two documents that I looked at that, on frivolous, stuff that is being submitted that makes no sense and that there could be a liability on the other side. So I think there's just an opportunity for us to really look over this thing. Some of the language in the two documents I looked at were pretty similar. In the documents themselves, I would say that half of the document of each one of them was pretty similar in nature. So it seems like they're going very clearly to what the rules and the regs are, but there was other pieces of it that they kind of, worked through, based on the village and based on if it was a committee or based on a certain individual being accountable for it.
Right.
You had the option, I think, to do either one.
Cindy, do you have any?
What's with the 45 days? Are we going to keep that in place, or how does that work, Pat?
The way I...
Do we vote on that, or?
What are you, 45 days?
Yeah, the one that says here that we have 45 days to file,
Well, that's not us. That's
or the
from the date of
FOIAs
knowledge. So
are.
the person who's filing the complaint
It has to do it within a time.
has to do it within a time period. And it's
Is there a
45
statute on
days.
that, or is that something we're going to be violating?
That's our code.
This is, just so you guys know, there's no statute on this. This is your ethics ordinance. It's, this board can do, whatever it wants with it. It's your ethics code. Not only just enforcement, the things you want to be looking for, that's up to this board. It's your law and your home rule. This is certainly in your realm. I can tell you when I've done these in the past, it always comes down to enforcement. That's where the problem, a lot of towns will do an ethics code and say, okay, we're going to look at enforcement, and then it kind of sits on the wayside. And, so it's difficult. We've run into some problems with the way this is enforced. And I agree with a couple things you said. The number one problem that I see in your code is right now you don't have, Mike, I think you put it very well, that threshold review. I know some of the elected officials have asked me in my office to look at some of the recent complaints that have come in and make a determination on whether they should be dismissed or things like that. I don't have the authority in this code at all, period. So I can't do that. I can tell you what I think, and I think I've done that on a few of them, but it wouldn't be proper for me to do that. And whether it's me or some other, any other village attorney, you wouldn't want your village attorney being the arbiter of ethics complaints, because sooner or later they're necessarily gonna involve elected officials, the manager, department head, whoever it may be. That's not the role for your village attorney, in my opinion.
The other thing, it might be good to just say what you have responsibility for, which is not a lot.
Sure. Under your ethics code, the village attorney's role is, I guess, twofold. First and foremost, on your enforcement section, we're to provide a list of attorneys, because that's how your system is set up. It's supposed to go to an outside attorney, provided by the village attorney. I've done that. I provided a list. We have the former attorney's list. We've gone to that list. Mr. Hervis is a part of that list. Quite frankly, if you wanted my opinion, I wish I wasn't involved in it at all.
I don't think anybody wants to be involved
I
in
don't
it, but
either.
at the same
and
time.
inherently, any village attorney, I looked at the last list. There were folks that were, from town, that were on other boards in town. I mean, you can imagine there's, when you're asking the village attorney to pick people they know, and again, I'm from this area. I know attorneys around here. I know municipal attorneys around here. That's who I'm going to pick. And if that's going to be a problem, then I'd ask we get rid of it, because it's putting me in a bit of a tough spot. And and it's not what this code should be about. That's the village attorney's main role in this. Also, we, as you guys know, and I provided it to many. You guys asked me questions, all the time on ethics-related questions, which you have the right to do. You can come to me for an advisory opinion. Hey, Pat, what do you think about this? And I will give you my opinion, and we go from there. We've done that many times since I've been here, and I think that's a role that should be played by the village attorney. I think that's a proper role. We have 3 in the queue right now that have not been sent out. Again, I've given some of my opinions on what I think of those 3.
Three complaints?
3 complaints.
Well, I thought there were 2. There's another
Am I
one?
wrong? Is there 3?
I thought it was just 2.
Okay, maybe 2. I'm sorry. 2 or 3.
Too
I'll have to
many.
double. Yeah, right. So, those have not been sent out. One of them, the next attorney on the list could not handle it. So we haven't talked to the full board about what we want to do about those. So, and I knew we've been working with the clerk's office, who's been inundated with these as well, and we felt it was the right time to bring it to you guys to see, at least start here and make this code as efficient as possible.
Some of the big concerns for me is this thing is very costly.
No doubt.
And I want to understand what we're getting out of it at the end. That would be any different if we did it a different way. And there is better ways to be able to do this where the cost effectiveness of this is there.
Mike, I don't see this as being done today. I see this as 3 pieces. One piece, we've got to correct some of this language. The second piece is we've got to set up some type of an independent person to do that threshold test, because whatever you have, somebody's got to interpret it, and that person's got to be free from any affiliation. You know what I mean? Just somebody that everybody could trust to say, I read it, there's something there, send it to the next level. And I agree, we need to gatekeep that that next level, because if it's $9,000 a pop, and the way our code reads now is any person or anyone who has any interest in property or a business can file a complaint against any village official. That's a lot of anys. That means anybody could say anything, and we got to go hire a lawyer at, whatever the cost.
And when you look at
we have to do something.
Like in one case, it's one individual, in the
Yeah.
other case, it's a group of people.
Right.
So it can be one or the other. So I think that's what we have to come to grips with. So I think the first question is, do we really want to go down the road to look at changing this? Which it sounds like, I think there is some interest to do that.
Changing it or having a good, reliable person to interpret it and say,
Well, you have to
this one
change,
goes
you have
on
to
this
change
one.
the ethics code.
We have to change the code to do that, right?
That's what I'm saying. We'd have to
Yeah.
change that. The
Pat,
second,
we don't, sorry, I thought you were done.
the second thing is, I just think that we have to look at this from the standpoint of liability if it's frivolous going forward, too. I mean, people have put language in there that has to do with that. So I think if it's a legitimate complaint, we need to follow through on it. There's
Absolutely.
no argument. I
Without
have
a
no
doubt.
argument at all on that.
Right.
But I think there has to be a check and balance in place for this.
And who-
Because this has turned into a very costly occurrence at the village.
Agreed. I think, how do we get to that independent, trustworthy check to see if something is a legitimate complaint? That should be sent on. That's I think, gonna be.
You have to have the right
one of the
person or
tricky
the right
parts.
group.
Person or group.
Who would that be? Who's such a neutral party that could do that?
If I could just, and I've talked to a few about this, I was pretty, actually, when I was in Homeland, I was pretty actively involved in actually setting up this ordinance, and I was like the liaison to this Ethics Commission. And it can work, it doesn't always work, but it really is dependent on getting the right people. And memory serves me correct, they had a priest, they had a rabbi, and then they had a businessman who had no affiliation with any of the politics. So, you've got to make sure whoever you find, whether it's one person or three people, that you can honestly say, look, I don't, they're not affiliated in any of the political sides, and somebody willing to kind of spend the time to do this, and they can function in the role of one being first the group that determines whether or not a complaint even meets the minimum requirements of being filed in time and is appropriately done according to the code, and then assuming it meets that, then they can actually review whether the code is valid. It doesn't mean that if for some reason there is a very legitimate ethics complaint that they may require legal assistance on, that they couldn't have the authority to
Right.
talk to the village attorney or
I
whatever.
think they
And
need that.
yeah, but as you've all said, it's crazy that we're spending thousands of dollars on these things.
And it's a
It is.
disruption to business
Yes,
as usual.
yeah.
I mean,
Dave, one question. In your past experience, either an individual, was there anyone that was paid to do that in your past experience? You had the right individual?
No,
Or
no,
was
my
it
experience
more
is-
volunteer?
It's either been a commission, it sometimes has been a staff person, which, to be very honest, I would not recommend the
Yeah, that
manager,
would
the
be hard
assistant
for me to
manager,
handle.
or the attorney, because we would be looked at as not being independent. There are towns that I think, probably go and actually find people that do that. I think, if you can get the right mix, if you have like a group of three people, then there's a little bit of, well, you don't have all this power in one person, you know what I mean? There's three people, and then hopefully there's a counterbalance on things. So that's, again, I think the argument would be if you can find three people as opposed to one, that's better.
The one
But
policy-
the question is
one
whether or
pol-
not you can do it. I don't, I can't.
The one policy I read was 7 people.
Seven,
It was
yeah.
7 people.
Yeah.
So I think how far do you take it out?
and how many people are gonna volunteer for something
Right.
like that? And they've gotta be able to keep it confidential, they've gotta be
Right.
able to have that
Three should be sufficient.
trustworthiness
Yeah.
to do it right
What I want to ask you,
and
Pat,
not be influenced.
So-
we don't have anything in here as far as filing an ethics complaint on putting your name or address or anything on there when you file a complaint, correct?
For the person filing the complaint?
Yes, so basically if you file a complaint and you don't put any information on there,
Boy, Mike, I don't know off the top of my head. I thought there was something in there. I know it needs to be signed in writing. I don't have the full code in front of me.
And these, Mike, they did.
I'd have to,
They-
That's what I'm
It
saying,
was
that-
part of their policy was very clear.
maybe we don't, I guess. I don't have the
So
full
like I'm
code.
saying, I think part of filing it, you should have to, as long as we're legally okay to do that, I think you should have to.
Sure.
If you're gonna accuse, someone on the dais, I think you should have to put your name on there.
But that then might show, like if somebody were an employee and they saw something wrong happen, they might be afraid to report it, because if their name and address is gonna be on there, then they'll know, hey, the
Can
guy
they go to HR?
who's my boss did something. It's like those whistleblowers,
Just to say what they become.
But just
under
let's be
HR.
clear that on a separate, we're talking ethics here, because there is a whistleblower layout that we're looking
This
at
is for
very
elected
clearly with
officials, Mike.
BKD,
Yeah.
which is our fraud company, to be able to do what they call a whistleblower program. This is more geared, I think, to the ethics piece, if you have an ethics issue.
I'd just be worried about certain circumstances where somebody may not report something because it may come
Gotcha.
back and hurt movement in their job.
Mhm.
But
I wouldn't say anything legally
it-
wrong. with
there's
that
something to be
requirement.
said for knowing who it is, because then you can get back to them and say, hey, you didn't give the witness list, or who might know about it. And it just,
I mean, you may be getting, if there's no names on there, you could be getting a handful in a week, like Mike was saying.
If
Just
it-
be-
if it went to this commission with the person's name on it, and the commission
Yeah.
kept that all confidential, you know what I mean, then it wouldn't be an issue
If they're
necessarily.
gonna accuse someone, I think the accused should know who's accusing them of what they did wrong.
I mean, part of the ethics process that they've gone through before, isn't there interviews that happen on both sides?
Right.
Yeah.
So the point is without having someone, you only have one side of the interview. And to me, that's a lot of money wasted if we're really making the argument that, you know, there's an ethics question here.
And if you do anonymous, I mean, in some ways, you're encouraging somebody who, I mean, just may have a grudge against somebody.
That's right.
Could be against a trustee, could be an employee
Yeah.
against a manager here, and that name is besmirched, and there's no, you know, there's no naming. So I think.
Well, there's a little more reliability when you
Right.
put your name on the bottom of
Yes,
something,
yeah.
that you believe in what you're saying.
Yep.
But if it were to go to this commission who was weeding things out first, they could decide then whether to pass the name on or not. I mean, if we had the right group with the right
Yeah.
credentials, I think
That's the key element.
that's the key. That's the key to everything.
I mean, we have to have the right people.
And how do you get them? Do you advertise? How'd you get them in Homewood?
You know, it was actually just some, as I said, a couple of religious people that were active in the community, well-known. You know, there is where's Donna? Donna, what is that?
Lieutenant Guard Ministerial?
Yes, ministerial group, and you and I haven't talked about this, but that, you know, might be a group to go to. You know, we could certainly advertise, but I think, you know, that might be a group to also go to too and see if there's.
So just a
Interest,
question
so-
for me, what would be the next step then, what we'd be looking to do here? I mean, that's what we've got to kind of come out of this meeting with.
I guess
I need-
we have to decide whether we want to change the
I'm
language.
really asking Pat.
Yeah, so with your direction tonight, if you want to look at commission structure, you know, before you figure out who you're putting on it, we'll draft it for you. I think clearly one of the things that needs to go into this code is, you know, that threshold review. You know, you need to make sure that, as somebody said, the minimum requirements are met. Whatever, it's timely filed, it's written the right way, and, you know, all the four corners of the document, without saying the substance is correct, or, you know, without even getting into any of the substance, just the four corners are correct. They filed it timely and everything like that. That needs to go in as soon as possible, in my opinion. If you want to give, you know, give us a little direction to look, if you like the Homewood model, and what was the other one we had in there?
Oak Brook.
Oak Brook, if you guys like those models.
There was parts of each one I liked.
Yeah.
Parts of-
So we'll do a hybrid.
If you want us to take a
Work
crack
together?
at, you know, amending it to more reflect the Homewood and the Oak Brook models, you know, committee and, you know, things like that, and, you know, that's something that we could, you know, we could do in pretty short order, because it's, I mean, it's not overly complicated.
It's pretty,
Yeah, right. And if there are other, I know there's been a couple other things we've talked about, you know, that we have a little more time to do on, you know, some of your filings and things like that, and, you know, we can talk about amending that as well, but I think we need to take this up soon, because these are coming in. It's a burden on, you know, the clerk's office is getting a lot of them, and we're getting them, so, you know, whatever the direction is tonight, you know, I'd like to turn it around quickly for you guys to look at and vote as kind of as soon as possible.
I think Dave's on the right path. Yeah, that was a really good idea, I think.
What was that?
The commission
Yeah.
of independent people to decide whether it passes the laugh test before it moves on. I think we could do both simultaneously, start working on changing the code and start advertising for these commissioners somehow.
even with these commissions, someone was still the responsible one of that commission.
Right.
Okay, so someone would be the lead of that commission
Have to,
in these
Yeah.
cases.
You'd have to have a chair.
You'd have to have a chair.
yeah.
And that's really what I want to make sure that as we're thinking through this, you know, you're kind of looking at it from a view.
And the other thought, again, is so putting the language on paper, really not that big of a deal.
No, it doesn't.
We can get the language for you pretty quickly, you know. Then we'll move to the next, you know, how do you want to appoint these people? You know, and then we're gonna have an appointment process. You want it to be a unanimous vote. I mean, I don't think you need to make that decision
Well-
tonight, but you can imagine where that argument's gonna go.
Appointment
You know,
leads
who
to-
gets to recommend
yeah.
these people and, everything like that.
I mean,
so
I
think
think
about
they,
that.
I think they probably, it'd be better if they came from outside of some type of an appointment. I guess, I'm just not sure how you would find it and who would decide who serves.
that's kinda-
Because the whole key is keep us out of it, because
Right.
we're the ones who may be investigating something. And if we've got our hands in who's selected, it might change the
I think you have
outcome.
to have an alternate too, just in case there's a conflict for someone, just so you don't, you get down that road and like, yeah, the guy's a conflict.
Especially if you only have 3.
Well, they could
Wow.
excuse themselves from
Sure, but then you only
consideration.
got
Yeah,
3
they could.
people.
Yeah.
Okay.
You want to have 3.
You want to have at
Yeah,
least 3.
an alternate, I think, would be a
Yep.
good idea.
Yep.
Or you could rotate them.
Now, in some of this language, there was a term. So they ran on a term,
Right.
a certain amount of time too. So that, that's just another thought process.
That's another
You
good
could even pay
suggestion.
them a flat fee. I mean, it'd be cheaper than the road you're going.
Well, that's why I was asking the question about that, because you bring someone in and you want the right people. The question is, can you bring the right people in if they have to spend this time? Can we do something at a level that makes sense to them, but then in return gets us what we want out of it and gets done the right way? That's why I asked the question, because that's exactly where I was thinking.
Well, what about one person, say a retired judge, and do it like pro bono, pay as we go?
Yeah, but then we're trying to save money. If we start
Hopefully,
paying
we'll
retired
stop
judges.
lawsuits and ethics complaints. That's the goal here for all of us.
That's a big part of it. Just pass along the ones that warrant, that are legitimate. I mean, I'd prefer a non-paid, but I can understand why you'd get more quality people if you pay them. I mean, Homewood didn't, I guess test the interest to see if we could get, what we could get and how it would work, and then,
How about the first step, Pat says, let's have Pat
Yeah, I think
draft
that is
something up
definitely the first
that we
step.
could look at,
Yeah.
and then we can go from there. I think these two have some,
How about we do this? We'll draft some of the main points and we'll leave some options there. So, you guys can look at it on paper. After the committee, then it does go to a retired judge or something like that. Because
Right.
at some point, these are, these are legal type decisions that need to be made. Do the facts based on an investigation lead to a
Do they merit what the
well, yeah,
proposal?
do they lead to a violation of the code? And then what? Those are all legal types of things. I don't know that priests or rabbis are going to be able to do that and give you that kind of report that you've been getting. I don't know that you want that kind of report.
I think
Even
the whole-
before I was here, the reports that I was given right away, I think Dick Devine did one, another attorney in town did one. These are 30-page reports that you're getting. And at the end of them, they say, okay, if something did or didn't happen, don't do it again, but we shouldn't be going into the circuit court of Cook County on these. That's what you've been getting recommended. Do you need 30 pages for that? I don't know.
some of these complaints we've got are so non-specific, you can't tell who and what to who. What do you do with that? That's why I think you need that threshold, and I think any layman could say, well, there's nothing to investigate there, and send it back to whoever the author was,
Sure.
give us something, and then, if there's enough, push it along.
Yeah,
But-
and I know, Mike, you're certainly familiar, it's the motion to dismiss process,
Yeah.
People should have a right to, you want to be able to pass a motion to dismiss, a real simple one, 4 corners of the documents. Does this warrant, just like you would in any other
I think we all
court.
agree with that.
Yeah.
That
Well, I think
first
we're
and
all on the same
foremost,
page, yeah.
I think we're all on the same page on that.
Yeah.
It's got to go through the sniff
Yeah.
test
Right,
right off the bat.
right.
It has to. And then it goes to the next level, and then that next level, if it has to move to a further piece, then we would have in the document what that further piece
Right.
would be. And I think it'd be great if you could put it together and we could,
We certainly can.
Do you want to
Very sure.
start looking for possible commission members, or give that some thought going forward? I'm wondering if we should do both simultaneously, or kind of see what it comes back. Are we looking for 5?
Why
Are we
don't-
looking for 7?
Can I recommend this? So why don't you guys think about, why don't we let staff, maybe, if we're gonna, let us think about that.
Yeah, why don't we think
Maybe
about it?
report to you,
We'll-
so,
yeah.
we'll check with
There's-
organizations in town and see if something makes sense. Bring that back to you. We'll have the change language. So it sounds to me, 2 things. unequivocally need to be done. One, threshold, motion to dismiss type language, and then two, start looking at a committee structure.
Maybe a little more than just the four corners. Maybe is there enough specifics to actually
Sure.
go forward type of thing?
Yep,
Okay, perfect.
we'll get you that.
Thank you. Anybody have any other questions on that?
No, I don't. You?
The next item on the agenda is to discuss ethics complaint, request for more information.
Sure. Well, this is, somewhat related to the first item. So, Trustee Glatz had asked that we go to the attorney handling the case against the case that the mayor had, and asked for some of the backup documents that he had. So really, I don't think that's a decision that's appropriate at my level, but just a couple of things to point out. One, I've tried to call Mr. I don't know, the level of documents, one, that may or may not be available. And what form they're in. And two, I think, well, I understand there's an issue about wanting to see the background information. I think one of the things that we do have to be cautious of here is that, people are interviewed, whether it's in this complaint or another complaint. Employees are interviewed that are, I'm sure, willing to be free and forthright, and even though it may be an uncomfortable situation, frankly, especially if it involves an elected official. That may not be the same case if you're all of a sudden, releasing transcripts or whatever the notes are on these type of cases. So that's, I guess, my caution here. And I think if you're going to do it for this case, I think you are basically saying that's the level of standard that you're going to have for all cases. I'm not sure how you do that differently, and it's not something we've asked any of the attorneys to do. Seems to me it's whether you do this regularly probably would be part of the same discussion you're having on the ethics code. But anyway, so that's kind of the issue in front of you.
My concern right on that would be some of the issues that you brought up. I really think that having a third party look at this, whoever it is,
Right.
even if it's a 3-member commission,
Right.
they have to have some type of privacy to the information they're receiving, because they're receiving it from a lot of people. And if those people think that that information can get out, they're not going to give the same answers. And that's the worry, that you want this to be as legit as it can possibly be. And I firmly believe that if people feel that that information could get out, first, how much can it harm them? I mean, that's the whole argument of a whistleblower program is the same argument.
Yeah.
Is that you have to have some type of privacy to what you're trying to accomplish here. So I would not recommend, because if you recommend it for one, you're going to have to recommend it for every single one. And I don't see the value that comes out of that.
I think we'll go this way. We'll kind of go around as trustees sort of express our concerns, then we'll ask you probably, Pat, what you're thinking. Cindy, do you have any thoughts on it?
The more information you release, the more people are able to get it. So privacy is there any standards like a HIPAA violation and things of that nature that are involved?
Pat, my thought is, when I first saw this, I'm in favor of complete and total transparency. And I'm like, let them have everything. But then the more I thought about it, I think potentially beyond just those privacy issues, we may be releasing things that may get the village in some trouble. Libel suits, defamation suits. I think, as much as is possible, we should be as transparent as possible. And you don't know where these documents are going to go once they're released. I think there have to be some limits. I'm just not sure where those limits are or where you look to for them. Do you look to FOIA? I know FOIA says you can have some things, but not everything. Do you get what I'm saying?
I do, but
Yeah.
I have a major concern with it.
Well, I do too, and the other thing that I noticed as I was reading the enforcement policy when we were getting ready for the other item is that the attorney is charged with keeping this completely confidential. So whatever we decide
That's what we're
here,
hiring him for. I mean,
whatever,
that's part of what we're
exactly,
hiring.
whatever we decide here today, he may not be able to release it because he's agreed not to. But maybe it's something to think about going forward, if it's, you know, are we gonna let this kind of stuff get out, and who can have it, and that type of thing. Do you know what I'm saying? I mean, the confidentiality, I can see the reasons for it, but I'm also a big proponent of transparency. Just not sure where those limits ought to be. That's why I'm looking for everybody's opinions.
That's a fine line, that's for sure.
Yeah, I guess, in terms of FOIA, notes, things like that, notes are not something that generally get FOIA. There's a specific exception on that, preliminary notes, drafts, memoranda, things like that. So, one, I wouldn't even think they'd be FOIA-able. I can certainly see the argument, though, on, this side. Technically, the village is the client in these. It's a little bit different because it's an investigatory role. Those documents probably do belong to the village. I guess I didn't think of the chilling effect, I guess is what you guys are saying, that, every note, if you're
I
telling
think
an
that's probably
investigator is
part of
going to
the
go
reason it's in there,
into.
that confidentiality part.
So I could see it. I could see, arguments on, both sides there. I get it. I don't think it would be common to get notes in every investigation, but then again, I haven't been involved in that many, so I don't know. I would think, the city of Chicago, their inspector general, he issues reports. My guess is the city council doesn't get all his notes. I don't know, but that'd be my guess. I think I do agree with the manager, though. If this is something you're going to want, we should let the attorneys or the committees or whoever's going to be doing these, let them know that, not only do we want the report, your summary of all these interviews, we want all the documents. All your notes. That's what we're talking about, right? Just
I could
the
see a
notes.
couple circumstances where you would legitimately want it,
Sure.
for billing purposes, who'd you interview, how long did it
Sure.
take, that kind of stuff. But some of the other information,
But that's a different argument.
well, that's something
Because
completely
if we're
different. That's
questioning the
limited.
billing,
Yeah,
the billing can be laid out the way we want to be laid out, to be
Right.
very clear on how many interviews he did, what the timing of those interviews were. All of that could be laid out in a billing responsibility.
Yeah.
If that's the reason why you're getting it, and if that is the
I
reason.
don't think that's
then
what
we
it's
have to
being
go
asked
back
for,
and
though.
change that.
right.
Because then we look at this thing and say, well, how did we spend, $9,000 on this? What happened with it? That's a whole different story.
Well, I think on this one, I think as a threshold matter, we've got to check with the, what was the guy who did it?
This is Hervis.
In the enforcement section, it says, the independent counsel shall at all times keep his or her investigation confidential.
Right.
I think as a threshold matter, you ask him, if we told you to, could you give it to us? I mean, I don't know if we could force him to or not. We're the client, but he's a lawyer. He's got an ethical duty. I don't know where that goes.
Yeah, again,
Yeah.
you're hitting on some good points. I mean, I get both sides of it. I don't know what he has either.
Who determines, Pat, if it goes to the circuit, the independent counsel, or is that up to us for that next option?
Well, it says, the code says the independent counsel can file
Council
a
determines that the
violation.
complaint is filed, a complaint will then be filed as an
Right.
ordinance violation with the
Based on what
circuit
that
court.
says.
Yeah.
But there's certainly, but all the ones I've seen, even when there has been a violation, again, these are maybe the one did by Divine or the ones before my time. I think I saw some violations, but the recommendation was it'd be silly to prosecute this in the circuit court. I've seen that as a finding.
Well, then maybe if they recommend that it goes to circuit court, then the officials are given that information. Like, as long as they recommend that it shouldn't go forward, leave it in the vault. But if they're recommending that they think that maybe we should take another look at it, they want our eyes on it, then I think it should be open. But as long as he if he finds it unfounded, then I think it should be sealed.
And Mike, based on that, they can come back to, I mean, you can come back to a certain group here. I mean,
No, I know, but that's what I'm saying. Maybe that's what you're talking about with the language. So as long as they feel that it's unfounded, then that's it. But if they feel, maybe we should take a look at it, or, leave it open, don't close the door, leave the door half open so that we have that option. Or if they say, you know what, after reading this, we think there's a lot of stuff in here, we're really not quite sure how you want to proceed with this, I think you guys should take a look at it, and your legal counsel as well. Then this way you leave that door open.
Give them the
I think
option
To the
almost.
stuff that's questionable, like some of them that
they
have
make
come
a
in.
recommendation. They can make a recommendation which recommends bad.
No matter what you do, somebody ought to read it and make sure there's nothing confidential or potentially subject of a lawsuit that you're
Sure.
releasing. You
But
can
just-
always redact parts.
But just wiping it out altogether, I think would be a mistake. If we leave that open door policy, as long as it's not frivolous or just basically unfounded, then we have that option.
That makes sense to me. If they want you to take extra steps, turn over the entire investigative file to the village.
So
That's
we're
not a-
talking about changing the code to possibly,
If there were to be additional steps recommended by, again, commission, committee, whoever's going to be doing these, then the entire investigative file shall be turned over to the village.
Like, for example.
I could take a stab at that
Yeah,
language.
that makes sense.
I don't know if this is a good example, Pat, but like the last one, the $9,000 bill. He asked for a 30-day extension.
Yep.
I believe all that information that came out of it that he thought was warning us for us to give him an extra, I don't know what that 30-day gave him, 5,000, 4,000? Maybe we should have took a look at it first and said, you know what, there's nothing here, why keep spending the money?
Well,
I don't know if you can do that.
that gets the whole.
because now
I know,
we're
I'm just-
That's
potentially.
the whole reason.
Because
If you don't want to
throwing
be,
it
If you're the,
Yeah,
if you're
no,
the
I
guy being
get it.
investigated, you say, don't spend the money, that's the problem. We
It's a
can't-
fine
we
line.
can't do that.
Yeah, I know,
It's a
just
fine
throwing it
line.
out there.
let me take a shot at it. I think,
You get the
I like the idea of, if they're asking you, this board or this village, to take additional steps, maybe then you do want to see the entire
Yeah, that
investigative
Well, we have
file.
to- if we're gonna make that call, we have to know.
Yeah.
why.
Exactly.
I mean, you would you'd think that the summary report should
state that.
indicate that. Any report worth its salt should do that.
I just think we should.
Well, they'll
cross
say
our Ts and
there's
dot our
5
Is.
witnesses we
Right.
still need to talk to, can we have 30 days more? And
Yeah.
that doesn't need to be specific to
Is that-
anybody's gonna,
Is that something you guys want me
I'm
to?
good with
to
having a look at that.
All right.
I'm a little nervous about it, but you'll draft it and then we'll
Draft it, then
decide
see how it
later.
looks
Yeah, we
like.
haven't made any call on it, Mike, we have to
Yeah.
look at it and see.
Do you have enough direction on this one? Anybody?
do.
No, I
Any
think
other
that's a good
thoughts?
recommendation.
So you're gonna check with Hervis, see if he can release it and then go from there type of thing? We'll talk about it next time, or?
Well,
Well-
if we're gonna go along the lines of what you've just given me direction, and Hervis said no violation.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Right.
That wouldn't be
That-
released.
He said
Okay.
we could, but he think it would spend a lot of money to, yeah.
Okay.
So that one would be an example, maybe it's done.
The next item on the agenda then is discuss the appointment process. And this, I think, comes out of one of the recent appointments that occurred. Part of that appointment was based on a section of the code that is for the appointment of the emergency management officials, and I believe Dave gave us a copy of the code. And basically, I think that section of the code created an exception for an appointment without the advice and consent of the board when there's an emergency. And my thought on this section of the code is that section of the code should have a caveat that says a promotion is not an emergency. And maybe we can consider some kind of limits on the time frame on that promotion, so that the board or whomever can review to make sure the right person's in that
Yeah.
spot going forward.
So, clearly, and all very good points, and just a couple things before we get into this too much. You know, one, there has been some litigation filed on this, so I do want to caution everybody about, you know, comments that are going to be made up here about that specific appointment. If we're going to talk about appointments in general, I think it's a good idea to talk about, just so, you know, kind of everyone understands, you know, the entire process and the form of government that you're in, really. So, you know, by state statute, you know, the way this government is set up is for the president to appoint with advice and consent of the board. That's just kind of a general 10,000-foot
Right.
view. There's another part of the Illinois State Code that says in, if you want to call it emergencies, vacancies, whatever word you want to use, there's a couple, you know, somebody, you know, God forbid, falls ill or dies or something like that, the mayor does have temporary, unilateral, temporary appointment power in certain circumstances. In my opinion, that's not a power that you guys can legislate away from he or she, whoever the mayor may be. Then you start getting into, you know, you're really changing the form of your government, and you cannot do that without a referendum. For example, if you wanted to say, well, let's let the manager make all the appointments, you know, that's not something this board has the authority to do. What I've said before, and how a lot of towns, you know, when there is some appointment, you know, when there's some issues with appointments, you know, I think one thing that the law has set forth that a board has the authority to do is limit the time of those temporary appointments. You know, that's been upheld by the Attorney General's office and probably some case law as well. So I think that's what you see happen in most of these circumstances. There's an ordinance passed by the board that's, I don't know, what, 6 months, 3 months, a month, whatever time you feel appropriate. Because the other area that could come up is, let's say the mayor puts forth an appointment that this board does not confirm, just a normal one, and you vote 6-0 not to confirm that. Well, then what? You know, then you've got a position that still needs to be filled. That triggers some mayoral authorities to make a temporary appointment as well.
Well, I think
So
doesn't
that's
he
how
then-
these things kind of come
Doesn't he
up.
then have to come back and make a second recommendation?
Yeah,
And then
so-
after that second recommendation, the third one is kind of,
You got it.
but at least you have the advice and consent, you know, piece there.
Correct.
And I mean, that's my concern, is that process doesn't work when you call something that's not an emergency an emergency.
So what I'm,
You know, I'm just saying, promotion ain't an emergency, and this section has an exception for emergencies. And I'd like to have that cleared up so that we say,
No problem.
promotion, you know, it specifically excluded our promotional appointments. But I absolutely understand what you're saying.
Right.
You need that emergency authority in an emergency. If somebody dies and somebody has to be filling that spot quickly, without a doubt. But I'm not sure that one qualifies, and that's,
just a question
That's
for
where I'm
me. If we put in an emergency and put a 30-day time frame in there, we have the right to come back after 30 days and extend that another 30 days, right? Or no?
Sure. I mean, you know.
I just want to
Yeah,
understand.
I'd have to look at, again, I've never drafted that. I know it happens a lot. I personally haven't drafted that.
Okay.
I'm sure there's some mechanism at the end of the 30 days, well, what next? You know, does
Yeah.
the mayor have to bring forward somebody else?
Maybe you could just extend it another 30.
You know, yeah, I don't know what that next, it's a great question.
The only reason I asked that question,
yeah.
is that's the only question I had before, was, you know, if we put in a 30-day rule, which, you know, in most cases, if there was a serious issue that happened, that we get someone in that position as quick as we can for that emergency, and then at the end of that time frame, make a decision either with someone new coming in, or we extend it for another 30 days.
I like that plan. How do you feel about defining emergency on this one? Are you okay with excluding promotions from that emergency classification, or?
I don't know, I thought the wording on that was pretty sound.
Yeah, this,
Well, it's obviously confusing. I took it for something different.
No, I'm talking about the
Oh.
fact of what we can do and can't do with it.
what I would recommend is track the language exactly out of the state code. exactly out of the state code. And that's, I don't have it in front of me, I can get it to you, then that's what the law is. That's what gives that temporary appointment power.
So we'll continue this, see what the state code says, and kind of, because
I could,
for one,
if you
would
give me that
be,
direction, I can draft it and
Be done with it.
have it ready for you.
yeah, I, for one, because to me, when I read that, it was emergencies only and not the promotion situation. And if I could read it wrong, I think a lot of people could read it wrong. And, I think there's obvious an interest in, when it's not an emergency situation, going through the normal process of promoting from within or
Sure.
interviewing to get the best qualified.
The other thing that I think if you put a time frame in it, it shows that it's an emergency. I mean, that's the whole,
Yeah.
I mean, when you state the time frame and it's a 30, whatever the time frame is, if it's short, it's for the purpose of that. I mean, it kind of gives it the.
Yeah, I see your point, yeah. Right, well,
I mean, the timeframe would be the question, is it 30, is it 60?
Right,
Because, I
right,
mean,
right. You don't know.
The idea would be, okay, God forbid something happens, right? And you want to get someone in, but you want to be able to, keep the boat rowing in the village, at that position. And then, but also allow an ample amount of time to do, advertise and promote for however long that process takes. And I think one thing we've learned here, it takes probably longer than
The time frame we're talking.
you all would think. That would be the only thing I would
Right.
keep in mind. So
What do you think
give me a
about-
number, I'll put it in, and we'll look at it.
We think about putting a number on there, how many times you could extend that 30 days.
I don't think it's a bad idea.
5 extensions up to 6 months? I don't know, just throwing it. Just make sure you have to have an end date.
Sure.
Because some people, in some towns, the temporary or interim appointment, people have used that for career jobs.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not set on the 30 days. I would just threw it out
I
there.
think
as a-
30 is a great.
You know, I
that
just
was
threw
what
it
I was
out
gonna
there because
suggest.
it shows that it's an emergency.
Well, remember, let's not confuse the two terms, because here you guys also do, you do a lot of interim appointments.
Right,
No, that's.
So those are a little different.
right.
And Mike, I know we've talked about whether we actually did cap those, and I think we talked about it as an
6
agenda
months.
piece.
It was, Mike seconded on
Yeah.
I think-
6 months.
I think it's part of
Still
the
disagree
agenda,
with you.
but we can talk about it tomorrow. But those are different, those interim appointments that you guys do, this is,
This
this
is
is, and then somebody, you need to fill it. So give me a number, and I'll draft it again, put it on paper, I'll send it back to you, then you guys approve it, or let me know if you have changes.
Okay, sounds good.
I think that's fine. Are you
That's fine.
suggesting
I just-
30? Do you want the cap part 2, or on the number of extensions?
Yeah, I mean, I'm comfortable as
It
long
just
as,
covers you.
I mean,
Do you want to draft something for us to look at? And
I will.
then we can
Why don't we do
vote it
that?
on or up next time?
Very good.
And, huh? I didn't do anything. Anybody else have any other thoughts on that? The next item on the agenda is receive comments from the public. Anyone from the public wish to address the committee?
Yeah, Mr. Niemeyer, I never heard back from my latest ethics complaint. Have you heard anything back? With
Tell me which
James
one.
Roche?
Yes, yeah, we did get that, so.
Okay, when I spoke to him on the phone, he was like totally different than Hervis. Hervis told me that he would send me an email on his explanation or his, what his findings were. Roche told me that he would just email it to the clerk and copy me. Hervis, even though I was disappointed in his decision, he actually was in contact with me a couple different times. Roche was a one conference call, who I believe is assistant or maybe is secretary, or it was a conference call that he was barely involved in. So I didn't really think that it went the way Hervis' investigation went, but I'm not sure because I never got any feedback from him. So I just wanted to throw that out there. Also, on this ethics complaint situation, I follow it in the newspapers, social media, the news feed, not on Facebook. And it seems to me that if you're a politician, and I'm not saying anything bad about anybody up in front of me or, the people that I file against, they seem like they're untouchable. I mean, there's blatant accusations in the newspaper and on the news feed, and nothing ever gets done about it. So, in my opinion, what's going on now, we have the pool of lawyers that are in this ethics that we pick. They're going to come out smelling like a rose. They're not going to find, it's always unfounded complaints because they want to make their buck. Now, if they find for me or the gentleman behind me that filed one or somebody else, maybe they're going to get thrown out of the pool and they're not going to get paid. So I don't think it's a fair shake what's going on now. I could be wrong, but I came in late on the discussion, so I'm not sure. It's interesting how you guys want to go about it, but I really don't think we're ever going to get an independent review. I hope I'm wrong. I hope somewhere along the line we can get a counsel or retired judge with some kahunas to stick up for us residents. And I'm sorry that I use that term, but some of the stuff that went on when you're found borderline reckless, but then Hervis acts like he's a psychologist and says, well, if he said he was sorry, I don't think he'll do it again. That doesn't really cut it for me, but that's just my opinion. So if you do find out the outcome of the Roche findings, can you email it to me?
Yeah, Laura, can you send it to me? Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Anyone else? Do I have a motion to adjourn the Administrative and Legal Committee meeting?
I'll make a motion.
Second?
Second?
All in favor? Aye.
Aye. Oh, you're last.
I'm last today.
I'm second. Lucky in the middle. I'd like to open the special meeting of the Economic Development and Marketing Committee, 7:25. Can I have a roll call, please? Trustee Berg present. Do we have to do it
Trustee
again?
Mangan present?
Trustee Panito present?
I'm not sure, I'm not a clerk, how to do the roll call.
Close enough.
Close enough. Item number 2, consider the approval of the minutes of the Special Economic Development and Marketing Committee held on October 24th, 2017.
So moved.
I'll second.
Thank you.
All those in favor? All in favor?
All in favor, sorry.
Aye.
So approved.
So moved. Item number 3, discuss ordinance establishing the Marketing and Branding Commission of the Village of Tinley Park. This item was brought to our committee on, what day was it? It was approved by our committee, by Michael, myself, and Trustee Mangan on the 20th. But I have a problem with creating another commission, when there are already 15. We're talking about adding number 16, and possibly another legal one is 17. And I have a meeting with Mayor Vandenberg tomorrow to try and see if I can combine economic development and marketing. Economic development and Main Street, because I feel like they're redundant. And I would like to know everyone's thoughts here.
I'll start.
Okay.
I read through the packet. I think there's a lot of work to be done in marketing, a lot.
Yes.
I saw some names on there that are people that I know from the community that I think are dedicated, caring individuals that are going to put their time and effort into it and would be an asset with their help. And boy, the more help we could get on some of these detail-oriented stuff, the better. You know what I mean? If some of those names said, this is what I think, and I saw it on an agenda, it would make it a little bit easier for me to, vote on it than having to do all the research myself and figure it all out myself. That's my own personal thought.
That's great. Thank you, Mike.
The marketing branding for me, I think, we're a big town. We're 60,000 people here, and I just really think that, with what Donna and her group has done to, at least in the 6-7 months I've been here, I think there's a lot of positive things that are coming out. I think the website piece that just, is gonna kick in the next 30 days with some parts of it already kicking in are a great asset to the village. So I just view that, as a committee, there's the opportunity to get input from a lot of other people. And then that broadens out to other people within the community. So I just think there's opportunity now, especially the fact that we've taken on this branding and spent so much time and effort on it, that I think there's some opportunities that can come out of it. So, I don't know if it's 2 committees or 1 committee, but I know having a committee for this as a standalone, I think has some value to it.
I believe it was brand leadership was combined with marketing, isn't that correct?
Yeah.
So marketing isn't going anywhere.
Yeah.
But this was under, sorry?
That doesn't exist right now.
It doesn't exist, it's a new committee.
It's under Main Street.
Right, it's a sub.
Right, it's a subcommittee, so now it's going to also be a subcommittee in general? It's going to have its own budget, or is it going to be combined with the budget?
It's gonna be a
So
standalone.
they'll be all standalone. So they previously didn't have to have a budget, and they haven't been in existence for a year, the branding, right? So the last time you altered the branding commission, it was not even a year ago?
You created the.
Yeah,
brand
when was it?
Subcommission of the Main Street Commission, sometime about a year ago.
So like December of 2016? Okay.
So I just clarification, I guess,
Yes,
trustee
Steve.
Burkholder. So it sounds like, I think what you'd like to have discussed more is the Main Street and ECC and whether they can be combined.
Yes.
Okay, so but parts of the agenda are just dealing with creating the Marketing and Branding Commission, and then part 4 is appointing members to that commission, and then the Main Street Commission members. So
So we can't proceed with 4 without number 3. Because Main Street, I would like to combine.
well, okay.
Economic development, I feel like they're one and the same. Redundant,
Okay, but the marketing and branding is separate from
correct.
ECC.
And
So
we would-
why couldn't you move forward with this while we're talking about whether we want to combine Main Street and ECC, I guess? That's what I'm not tracking.
I just feel like we have way too many commissions.
Okay.
So one of the, trustee Bird, one of the things with that,
Good.
It is good.
Yeah, number 3 is good, but the one here.
But it's the switching around, and I want to know if we're going to switch it again. I mean, this has not even been in existence for a year. The branding as a subcommittee now is going to that. Is there any more changes that you could see upstream that we would have with the marketing and branding as it is?
I would not, I would recommend it become a standalone commission because if there's a lot of requests made out of those people who are existing Main Street commissioners right now, who we're also asking them to be part of this branding group, and that has taken so many legs, it's been so active that they're.
Yes, yes. So I understand. So some of the main streets have gone to branding. So does
Because right now it's a subcommittee.
So does that leave Main Street with less members that could possibly join economic development? I think it's better that each commission has as many members as possible and be smaller so that meetings aren't canceled and they're held and everybody's able to attend and have a quorum. That's what I'm thinking.
So are you interested in allowing the branding committee to become a standalone committee? Like branding.
Branding and marketing, I'm interested in them coming together, but not any more changes to that for at least a year and adding more additional things. I don't know. I know that came from the Roger Brooks and the Plaza, right?
Right.
Is there any more items in that plan that we're going to introduce as a commission, or are we set?
No, I don't.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of things in the Brooks plan that the commission
Yes.
will deal with, but I think what I'm hearing you say is that we should, and I think you probably would want to have discussions, obviously, not just with the board, the mayor, but you're talking about combining 2 commissions, ECC and Main Street, and I don't know, that may be viable, and so that probably shouldn't move forward, but there's a lot of work, I think, in branding and marketing that we kind of want to start, so can we at least move forward the marketing and branding commission aspect?
As long as it warrants that it will be not disposed of in a year, then we will continue on. Was this only until the plaza's finished, or
Oh, I see.
the
what
branding and the wayfinding?
Yeah.
Is this going to be something that is not going to have a future past
I
1
think-
year? Are these,
Roger, I think it's fair to say, when, branding is, while there's going to be a lot of energies the next few years, this is not something, you're one and done with. I mean, this is going to be something continual every year. There's going to be a lot of work in the first couple of years because we're talking about building a plaza, programming, but that doesn't have an ending period. We're going to be,
The marketing of our village is going to go on
yes.
consistently.
yes.
yes, it is.
Yeah, so I think.
I'm questioning the branding aspect.
Well, the branding, I think the branding piece of it brings another element to the village. So, the marketing piece is critical because we have to grow as a community, and we want people to understand what we're doing as a community. The branding piece of it, the fact that it's new, I still think we have to give it the energy to really keep it going if we believe that this is the right branding. I think it's something that is going to be a part of us for a while.
Those people in that committee will even give it more force, more energy.
I think that's the value that you get with, and here's the other part of it. We have more people from the village that, I think people that come into these committees, come into committees that they enjoy being on for the purposes of, might have a background or they might enjoy doing it, and I think there's a value that comes with that.
Absolutely. It's their time and energy also.
Yeah, I see both branding and marketing going on for a long time. I mean, it's not, I think if the concern is, are we going to come back in a year and say, well, we don't like branding, marketing, and we want to do something? No, I mean, that's not our intention.
Okay, that's what I want to make
Yes.
sure of.
We're not going to create another new commission out of that commission, I think.
You also,
Thank you for that.
Trustee
Okay.
Bird, also
Yes.
part and parcel to the branding and marketing thing, we would also, I don't think you guys have the most recent ordinance, but we'd also be getting rid of the previous subcommittee. So you wouldn't have the subcommittee and this. This is,
Right, so.
With its own budget altogether. All right, well, we can make a motion to bring the Marketing and Branding Committee to the board for approval.
Is it too late to ask a question?
Oh, no, go ahead, sorry. I thought you were finished.
What is the budget kind of projected on this? And just
Okay.
a place to meet and, that type of thing? I know she said a budget
I don't
on.
really anticipate.
Yeah, I
there
can't
being
see
a lot
much.
more of a
Okay.
budget. We have a marketing budget right now that we would be operating
Okay.
underneath, so I.
Yeah. I'm just wondering if there's a big expense along, yeah. All right, no problem.
Probably
I'd-
will.
I'd make that motion.
I'll second that motion.
So moved. Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
I always forget that. So number 4, discuss appointments, Branding Marketing Commission members and the Main Street Commission members. Does anyone have any idea who's moving where on the memberships of these commissions? I think there
Well,
were
there's a list,
3 people left and 4 were trying to go on to Main Street.
Right, with the existing Main Street commissioners that have requested to move to the branding commission, there will be 3 existing Main Street commissioners. Right now, the ordinance calls for 7 members, so I did bring 4 names forward for.
Okay.
is this part of what you're talking about combining?
I want to combine the second part, Main Street, with economic development.
So my thought would be that if you're looking at the appointments for Main Street, I don't think it'd be right. I mean, I don't think you'd want to appoint them and then combine them.
Exactly.
So do you want to move forward with?
Well, I don't
the-
think any of these
Table.
names are the same.
I would like to defer. And did this go through the Economic Commission, or the branding? Oh, wait a minute, I'm sorry, wrong one.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
There's 2 headings, Marketing and Branding
Main
Commission
Street.
with a group of members and associate members. And then there's a separate heading, Main Street Commission. Those are 2 different commissions,
That's
right?
correct.
So you're asking, are we okay with the Marketing and Branding Commission members?
That was that's
Okay.
the request, yeah. Well, right.
No, the beginning of item number 4.
The creation of the commission. Essentially what's happening is we have the subcommittee right now. That group exists. We're not recommending any changes to that group. That group would just become a standalone commission focused exclusively on marketing and branding.
And would these associate members and other people be allowed to come to the marketing and branding committee meetings if they wanted to, or?
They
Yeah.
do.
They are.
Okay.
Yeah, they all come.
They are part of
Yeah.
the committee.
They are
Okay.
good.
Understood. Thanks.
That's what she's asking us to agree to, so she can bring it up. Where the other piece is what Cindy is having the concern with.
Right. I just
There's the
noticed
other
they
piece
were,
below it.
The redundancy of the Main Street.
So can we approve the marketing and branding since those?
The members?
Yeah, the members,
Yes.
that's what she's
You want us to
asking.
approve the members? We can approve the members of the Branding and Marketing Commission. And the Main Street, can we hold off on the 4 till we I meet with, revisit with my mayor and find out what
Yeah, we can do that.
we can do to reduce the
So I'll
redundancy
make
and
a
extras?
recommendation for the marketing and branding committee members.
I'd second
To
that
move
motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And then the Main Street, we're going to just hold off on that.
Perfect.
Thank you. Item number 5, discuss staffing study marketing portion.
So, I think everybody's aware, we did a village hall staffing study about a year or so ago, and we've been kind of gradually moving forward some of the items in that study, from the combining community development to the IT manager, eliminating the second assistant manager, and so on. One of the critical items, and really I think related to what we just discussed, is we have an all part-time marketing department, which, in the days when they were focusing mostly on marketing and special events was challenging, but able to do it with the new scope of duties, branding, it really is not, it's not feasible anymore to have a department like this without at least a full-time director. So, at this point, it's one of the recommendations of the staffing study. I concur with it. We're in the process right now of preparing 2018, 2019 budget, which we'll be discussing initial recommendations with the board a week from Saturday. And so I'd like to include this in that new personnel for next year, essentially, would be increasing the hours for the marketing director to full-time.
I think marketing is huge, and we need a full-time marketing director, as I've said to you, Dave, since we began this term as trustees. So I'm wholeheartedly in favor of a full-time marketing person, and thank you. Any questions?
I agree. I think a full-time marketing director is a good idea and the way to go. My question is on the salary. So you're going to have somebody working full-time and in the interim pay them the hourly wage until the budget cycle comes and we agree to?
Yeah, and we'll have recommendations on
salary?
salary as part of the budget, so. I mean, I didn't put that in here again, because this is just conceptual, but, right now Donna's working 34 hours a week hourly. There's already benefits associated with that, so, I mean, this is not going to be something that's going to be a significant increase.
Yeah. Well, I just am trying to kind of get a handle on what you're
Yeah.
going to do in the interim, and then come budget time, we'll deal with the salary part. But now we're just making the promotion.
Well, I think you're
Just
making a
We're just
recommendation.
discussing now.
On the
Okay, thank-
concept. Yeah,
Okay.
we'll have to probably,
So-
we have to do some tweaks with the job description. We'll have to develop a new pay plan, because the current pay plan is based on it being 34
Yeah.
hours.
It's just a concept.
Yeah.
So we have a new pay study.
Yeah.
In concept, I'm fine with it.
Yeah.
Dave, could you get some other numbers for other marketing directors around Orland and Frankfurt?
We will. I think
So
we
we can
may have.
compare a salary for a
we may
full-time
have-
individual who's coming on?
Yeah, I think we may have some of those from the study that was done last year, but we'll get you that, and we'll include that as part of the budget process.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have something, Cindy.
Yes, Michael?
Dave, do we necessarily have to wait until May?
No.
Because one thing I just want to correct so everyone knows, and correct me if I'm wrong, when you just said that she's working 34 hours a week, she's getting paid 34 hours a week.
That's, yes.
Donna works an ungodly amount of hours.
Yeah, I was
And-
understating that.
And all of these events that we've had, Donna's there on Saturdays and Sundays, and what we're doing is they're banking her hours. So it's really costing us more. We're not, I don't see any reason why, if it was, it's your committee, but why we wouldn't just go full-time, unless there's a reason not to, because she's already doing the job as it is. I mean, she's putting in her, 50 hours a week or whatever, and then when we have all these events, she's there all week long.
Because of the situation.
So we're still paying her.
It's scheduled for 34, but it's not practical. Look, we can start this February 1st, March 1st. I still think the questions the committee's asked, we need to establish, there is going to be a different pay schedule. There is going to be, we need to go through the administrative.
I mean, I
Yeah.
think the concept's there.
Yes.
The
Yeah.
next step
Full-time.
is now for
Yeah.
Dave to get the data.
There's 8
Yeah,
part-timers.
I just want everyone to be clear that she's not working
Mike.
34 hours a week.
Yeah, we see.
I know
Thank you.
you do, Mike, but just for the
Yeah.
ones that, are just watching and they think she's working she's not working 34
No,
hours.
it's a good point.
No, but I'm
She's
just
not
going by
getting
the
paid.
staffing study, the full-time's recommended, there's 8 part-timers. Maybe when the pay study, the salaries come out, maybe through attrition, people may not want to stay. I mean, you never know.
So you want just a
I
recommendation?
think it's,
Direction,
Yeah.
move forward.
Move
so
forward.
Move
moved.
forward.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Item number 6, discuss approval of the Oak Park Playbook grant programs. Patrick, do you want to address some items?
So there was a question regarding the cap that came up, and we went back and talked about it internally, and thought that if we capped it at $70,000 per year per business, that would allow them to take part in the, one of the most requested or nominated ones from the ECC and from the Main Street Commission, which is the ADA and the sprinkler problems. So if they did both of those, or they could do a combination of a facade grant, which is at 35 matching, and maybe some landscaping or something like that. But that way, it would cap it at 70 per business per year. So not to say that they couldn't one year come in and do the sprinkler program and make everything ADA compliant, the next year come back and ask for a matching grant for facade, and at the end of the day, it's gonna run through Main Street if it exists, or if it rolls over to ECC, and then comes in front of the full board for approval. So that was the big cap issue.
I think my big concerns with this, Pat, just so you kind of know where I'm at, is keeping it fair, so that there's a process in place so that everybody has a fair chance at getting it, you know what I mean?
Well, sure.
And then the details, which you kind of are talking about, where, the same company doesn't get it year after year, and possibly something in there about a payback, if you get it and then you leave, that we get first rights at getting our money back type of thing.
Sure.
Those are the things that come to mind right away, but
Those are
the
good points,
details
Mike.
are,
Yep.
yeah.
Some of the other things we're talking about is, just looking at the buildings themselves. We don't want to put X dollars into a building. I mean, we have to really evaluate that process to determine if we put X amount of dollars into the building, we want to make sure that that building's wherewithal is to, stand what we want to do. I do think there's got to be some very clear rules and regs that we have to abide by here, and I think there has to be, a group of people, the finance people that would be administering, making
Right.
sure that the money that's being put out, holding to the rules of, if there's a payback within the first 3 years, they have to pay X% the first year, second year, and third year. So I think Pat's done a really nice job of putting the playbook together. I do think there's some, specific line items that we're probably going to have to, just tweak as we go through it, but I think the plan as a whole has some opportunity for the downtown Oak Park area, neighborhood.
I don't disagree. I think some of those buildings are not viable as they are in this sprinkler incentive.
And that's the hard
kinda
part
makes
that
it-
we're we've
yeah.
had discussion on that. How do we put that together?
Right.
We're still talking, Pat's got some ideas. I think there's got to be some things that we really evaluate, and we have to put that together, when we get the playbook ready to roll out.
Do we have an idea on how much we want to put into this?
It's a budgetary line item. I think it's important that, everyone's input kind of comes into that. Pat's thrown out a number in the last couple of meetings of 350,000, but we have to kind of determine how we want to put that together and what we want to do. And I think the critical element is we are going into the budgetary process, and we have to kind of determine, how much we think going into the first year, we want to give to
And
the,
this is geared strictly to Oak Park, correct?
yeah.
Yes, it's gonna act as almost like a pilot program, so we, target and clean up downtown first, and if it's successful, we can roll it out to the rest of
And where would that money come from?
General fund, as far as I know, to start.
Well,
And that's what we're
we'll
talking
see
through right now,
come-
Mike,
yeah.
is really, you know, that's the whole purpose of our strategic day, is to lay out a lot of things that, you know, how we're going to pay for and what we're going to do going into next year.
Ideally, if we start this with the general fund, and then if the TIF actually generates, when it generates, then we would use TIF funds for this.
That would be the goal.
I have a question, Patrick. Did this go through the commission?
Yes, I have a full timeline of every commission that I went through. It's been through a couple of.
Economic development,
Yeah, it went through the ECC on.
and what did they say?
The only concern that really came out of it from on the September 11th meeting was that it was just for downtown, because ECC is for all of the village. And so they were thinking, you know, if we're doing it just for one area, could there be a conflict for that? And so that's why we're trying to roll it out as more of a pilot program. Let's test it downtown, then if it works, then we can kick it out everywhere else. So on September 11th, it was talked about. We tried to get it on the October one, but we didn't have a quorum for that. It went through the Main Street Commission twice. It's been through here before, then back to the board, and now back down. We'll probably talk about it at ECC for the second time, which would really be the third, but we don't have a quorum next Monday.
Pat, if I remember right, those votes were unanimous coming out of those committees, or is that?
They were just discussions. We got
Okay.
feedback, we had them all rank them as far as which, out of the plays, I think there was like 17 total. So we asked them in an email to, actually Main Street was live, to vote on what they thought were the most viable ones, and the ones that really rose to the top were the sprinkler and 88, because people
Yeah.
realize that some of those buildings are just, you know, people
Yeah.
don't want to invest in them because of that. So they're out there.
So moving forward, when will we quantify the amount at the budget meeting that we're having? Is that the
Yeah.
9th, the 2nd or the 9th, Dave?
It's the 9th.
So-
Yeah, in fact, we had a discussion, I think we put like 300-some thousand in today, we were discussing as staff, so that, I mean, obviously, we can discuss that, but that's,
So Monday, ECC, and December 9th, we will
December 9th is.
decide on 300, 350, or
Well, I
how,
think
where
you're
it's
gonna give us some
going?
preliminary guidance. The purpose of the 9th meeting is to kind of talk, I think, as trustee Magnin was saying, about big priorities. And there's a lot of big priorities, I will tell you. We developed a long list today, and so you're going to have to help us prioritize those.
One other question on this. We're not asking us to send it to the board right away. We'll get a little more details and a final thing before we send
Yeah,
it up? or-
definitely.
Or is this, I mean, my big concern is the system in place for distributing the funds type of thing. You know what I'm saying? Making sure that it's a fair system and everybody gets an equal shot, while at the same time recognizing certain buildings need certain things to make them develop. Do you know what I mean?
Mhm.
That's kind of my big concern, is that we use it wisely and distribute it fairly.
So you
And
want to see
that-
some
that just
tweaking
a
of
couple
that?
details to kind of, so that I know that it's going to be, I mean,
Well, it's up to the
just if
committee.
you could let me see it before we go.
Yeah, I just
set it
think,
up.
you know, whatever number we move forward with, I think the key is we're going to need some time to start rolling this out.
Right.
So, you know, if we want to start the program next fiscal year, you know, we got to really start promoting it after the first of the year and kind of talking to businesses. And so if there's additional tweaks, we can make them. I just wouldn't want to delay approval too much longer.
So you're planning on sending it up today? I mean, I don't have anything here other than the $70,000 cap. so-
Well, I think there was a whole packet that was in the agenda, it was in last board agenda,
Yeah.
and it got tabled, so.
That's what I was kind of thinking, to
Okay.
come back for more details on the disbursement and.
I would
you
like
know,
that too, a little bit more
prioritization.
concrete information. Do you think, Mike, are you going to work on that?
We got
Finances?
specific things we got to work on.
Out of the
how it's
general
gonna
fund
roll
with
out,
Brad?
How it's going to roll out. The general
Okay.
fund part, you know, Dave has been clear that amount of money has been dropped into it based on going into
Yeah.
next year. What we have to do is, there's going to be an administering portion of this we have to do.
That's the part.
And if you go back to the playbook and you look at the dollars and cents for each one of the line items, it's in the playbook.
Yeah.
The question that came out of this was, could someone use from 4 different areas and take out most of the
Yeah.
money for the year?
Right.
And that's where it went back to
Yeah.
Patrick to say, okay, the maximum amount that they would be allowed to do would be X. And that's what we're trying to get to the next level. The goal is to get this going to a level that there's some interest in it. But administering it, there's going to be clear rules that they're going to have to go through internally to be able to make this happen.
Will-
And those have not been put together yet,
Will
but they will
board
be put
review be
together.
part of it, do you think, or?
Huh?
Will board
Who
review
will
be
do
part
that?
of it?
Yeah.
Oh,
I mean,
well, then we
it's
gotta
gonna, when
kinda
you say
check
board
and balance.
review, we're gonna have to come back with exactly how we're gonna do it and how the money is gonna be administered. But I do think that there probably will be some discussion on that on the 9th, you know, because this is gonna be one of the things we're gonna have to make a call on, so.
So
we
when
can
it
talk
was
through
on
that.
last time, we weren't agreeing to an administration piece, we were just agreeing to a conceptual piece.
The concept was bigger than the concept, because there was very clear in each one of them what the amounts were gonna be for each
Yeah.
one of those. I think the big question would be, and it's still a question,
Yeah,
is how do we determine if a building deserves to have that amount of money put into it?
Exactly.
And I don't have the answer to that yet today. I don't think any of us do. And I think that's some of the things we have to kind of finalize.
So-
and if you get 10 applications, you kind of say, this is the strongest, and they need it the most, and,
Well, I think
There.
each application is going to have to go through its own process, but the key element is that we only have X dollars.
got it.
And that's the big question that's here today. And it's been a question by the citizens, and I get it. You know, because if we do get this out, and it is a very positive program, you know, we could be out of the money pretty quickly.
Or if we could even incorporate, Mike, to have the, our own inspectors look at it too and have them run through it.
Yep, yep. And those are great points, and I think that's what we want to kind of get to. I mean, if you could, I'd like you to go back to the playbook and
Yeah.
look at it and get a little bit of the concepts down, so that when we do talk on the 9th, you got a pretty good handle on each one of the components of it and how it
Yeah.
ties in.
Yeah,
Well,
I
some of them
just-
are really expensive. Facade is done in other communities. It's been very successful. But the fire code, I'm not so sure. Has that been done in a lot of places too, Patrick? Or
I don't think so.
are we unique to that?
I think we're unique to the fire.
Is that the
code.
most expensive thing?
I think didn't we get that from Lockport or something?
Lockport did it on a retail basis. I don't know if they did well, they might have done the
There
fire
was
code.
somebody I thought we
I'll
took.
pull through the research.
Yeah.
No, I
Thank
like
you.
the ideas, it's the devil is in the details, the administration, the prioritization, and it just seemed like there was a lot of detail there.
But I can tell
That
you,
was
there is
allowed.
businesses on Oak Park, and we've had a couple of them already in the last couple of months, where, you know, when they go in to do it, and a landlord is looking to fill a vacancy that's been there for 5 years.
Yeah.
The biggest component that really kills these guys is the ADA and the fire protection. And the problem that they're running into is once we get those people in there, it just rejuvenates the values, it just increases the values of the commercials. So there is some values that come out of this, like, you know, for dollar, I can't promise that it would be dollar for dollar, but there's
Well,
value
it'll
to it.
reinvigorate the downtown
Yeah.
core,
Yeah.
yeah, I agree.
So, can I ask this, so, because of the holidays, unless you guys want to, the next committee actually wouldn't be meeting until January because of your schedule of December 26th. So, if we can work on, say, some of these rules, maybe with, you know, like trustee Mangan and trustee Berg.
For me, Pat, just either way, if you want to set it up as an approval in concept, and then we'll work out the details.
That's what I'm talking, like a
administering the
two-step thing.
funds.
Because this way,
Yeah.
if we can get it approved Tuesday in concept, basically the programs and the amounts, and then we can come back to January, February before, you know.
Right.
I think that would at least help, I think Donna and Patrick start to be able to at least get this thing promoted and start to set up meetings with, you know, businesses and such.
I'd
Okay.
prefer that. I'd feel more comfortable approving the concept and the purpose, and then coming back and dealing with the.
Putting the dollars on it later?
And we already did have one business come in and ask for an
Really? I'm glad. So where we're leaving off is Monday, ECC. And then our next board meeting, approve the concept, but not the monies or the general fund monies.
I think it's the administration of the monies.
The administration.
You know, what the
Well-
application has to say, who can get it,
Yeah.
what the limits are, how often, those details.
Well, I guess, let me just, when you say the money, because there's the individual.
The money's
grants.
coming out of the general
There-
fund.
there's-
You're saying that for sure.
Well, initially, it's gonna have to be. Yeah, but, so,
Right now, we have no choice.
there's monies allocated that somebody can apply for each program. What we haven't determined is how much money is gonna be available for the whole program. That's part of the budget discussion.
So we should wait till after December 9th?
I'm fine. I think if we could just get this approved on whatever the last Tuesday is, or the 19th or whatever. I think that would be good. I think that would be helpful, right? Yeah.
Okay.
So, and again, we can still do it in a two-step process, approve the actual program with the amounts that's in each program, and then come back with
The
all
final
the details and.
Amount and the
Yeah,
details?
Yeah. Okay,
Yes.
all right.
So moved.
All in favor?
I think you need a second.
Second?
Second.
That was a second. All in favor? Aye.
So that's to move it forward for preliminary concept approval, is that?
That's what it is,
Yeah.
yes.
On the 19th, I think.
Any further comments from the commission here? Any comments from the public? Thank you, guys.
This is coming from the general fund,
Right now,
Yes.
that's what
and at the previous meeting, I believe we had a problem with paying Christopher Burke engineering fees for the LPR cameras, where we didn't have the money, so we're gonna go take it one step at a time. But now we have money to pay for this and not Burke?
Well, that's public safety. Is that coming out of there, Dave?
I mean,
It hasn't been budgeted
It hasn't
yet.
been
We're going to do
budgeted,
that in the
yeah.
next.
So it'll be budgeted on
This is-
December
This
9th?
is for next, this is basically for next budget year. And the reason why we want to get this approved now is we're going to have to basically develop rules, market it to businesses. This is to set it up for next.
Right, so,
Fiscal year.
okay, we're almost in December, so I'm not talking about this year for Burke, because I don't think they'd have enough time, but at the meeting, they were saying that we didn't have enough money for Burke, so when would that be, 2019 for Burke?
Who said we
when
didn't
we-
have enough money, Michael?
It would be back in the meetings, I'm
Okay.
not sure if it was Kevin or John, I don't want to put words
Yeah,
into
I
their
know.
mouth.
Hey, Mike, I think what that was, we were going to approve the Christopher Burke for the engineering for the rest of the cameras.
Okay.
So what we previously had budgeted was for 183rd in Harlem, and then we were going to budget additional monies for the remainder of the camera installation.
Okay, all right, just as long as that's cleared up, because there's so much stuff going on, and I
Right.
just wanted, okay, thanks, Pat.
There
Appreciate
is,
it.
no problem. Thank you, Economic Commission Representative Diane. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for thanking me, I guess. I just want to say a couple things, because I'm on both sides of this. I completely am for us working on these incentives, because I'm involved in this in another town, and I'm seeing what it's changing. It's awesome. But I also have a lot of reservations on how we control things in this village, how we have our processes and set up, and that we're not transparent. And I hope that when you set up these rules, that we can see it. Like, same thing, we had that TIF meeting, and I said, the biggest problem we have with all this is, yeah, there's reports out on the state sites, and they roll over years, but we want to see how much is given out to each person. I would expect, if we're going to give out these incentives, that in the end, I'm going to know exactly who's getting them every year, and I want to see that the receipts were turned in, that they paid out these bills, and who they paid to. They were reputable companies that are spending it. We should be getting all that detail back when we get to give this money out to these companies. And 1 year, to me, is not enough. There should be a 3-year requirement that you have to stay in this business for a minimum of 3 years before you're not going to have to pay it back. And then they should. Most
think
of them
that-
are 5 years.
that's one of the
Things that I'm
details,
buying
yeah.
is 5 years. But we're saying that there's a second year they'll get back half. So they don't have to stay in it 3 years. When I'm, like I said,
Scale
5 years
down.
is minimum
Right, it
from
is
what
a
I'm
scale down.
involved in, and we should do it for more than that. Otherwise, people are just going to use this to take our money to resell the business and make money off of the
Can-
taxpayers, and I don't want to see that
And I
happen.
think
you
your points are well taken.
Absolutely.
I think the administrative part of it, we can make it easy. I mean, Pat's going to be, he's going to be managing this. And I think there's transparency to this to make sure that the community's seeing the value that the citizens are getting out of it. So I don't think that's hard. It just-
Yeah, I don't think it's hard at
today-
all. I think we just have to do
think
it.
today we haven't laid that foundation down yet. But as you can tell, today there's still, is the building going to be able to suffice being able to have the work done on it?
Right.
There's going to have to, Mike's point, there's going to have to be people within the village that goes out and looks at these buildings to validate, is the work been completed? That those are things that are going to be in the checks and balances that we're going to have to.
Right.
If we give out a check, of course, we have to go out and look to validate, did they put the sprinklers in?
Well, I would
Did they-
assume we're going to get copies of their invoices.
Yes,
We're going to see
yes.
that they actually paid them out.
Yep.
And I would expect I don't want to have to FOIA that. We shouldn't just create reasons for us to have to
Right.
ask for this information. It should be out there. If you're going to ask us to give away our money, make it transparent, who's getting it. They shouldn't be the same company getting it year after year. Same thing should be rolling. If there's 10 people on the list, that one company's not going to get it until you've gone through the 10 people.
Well, we
you know?
want to give it out to as many people as we can. That's the value of it.
Sure,
And
just
that's
not
what
the
we're
same-
talking about
same
internally.
person.
I just
Sure.
think that some of the points you're bringing up are points that we're walking through.
Good.
And I think the administrative part of this thing, we're not close on it yet. I think the administrative part of it, we will be close by the time we pull it out and then the first checks have to be issued.
Diane, when you say how things are going to get out there, the information, how would you propose that would be done?
Well, on the
How would
new
you like to
awesome
see
new
that?
website that we're going to have?
In
there's-
your economic development
Yeah, I mean,
committees, would you
I-
like that to be brought back to certain?
Well,
I know you said you had
I would
experience
hope
with
that
another
you guys
village.
can Tell us how you're going to do it, and hopefully we won't complain. I mean, that's your job. I mean,
Yeah,
I
no,
feel like
we
that's your
will-
role,
we'll
your
be
job to do
bringing
it.
it back to
And
the
then tell us how you're
appropriate
doing it, and hopefully we would, Mike, auditing is auditing. We have expectations, and I think, it should be posted out there. We should be able to see exactly what's being
It's the
given out.
value of the marketing.
Right.
That's another piece that just ties in, is that we're able to go out and promote something like this. I think the word of mouth is going to happen pretty quickly.
Oh, yeah.
I still
Yeah.
have,
Oh, yeah.
Once this gets going, I think the word of mouth will be very positive.
right. Oh, no, like I said, I'm 100% about doing the incentives. I've seen it work. It's just the control of it is what
Right.
else.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening.
So for the grant program, I think, did you state that it starts with the Main Street Commission making recommendations as far as businesses that would receive the money?
That's the way it's set up currently.
Okay. And who makes up the Main Street Commission? Is it all
Main
business
Street
owners?
is
I don't
exactly-
need names.
No, it's not names. I'm going to give you the breakdown.
Is it mainly
Hold on one
business
second, my
owners
dear.
on Oak Park Avenue?
Main Street
Anybody?
is
Yes.
Pat, you want to
Yes.
walk through?
They're all Main Street.
Yeah.
4 business owners, 1 Tinley Park TPCC, which is the Chamber of Commerce. No, wait, Economic Committee, Economic Development Commission, and 1 HD Commissioner.
Okay, well, point being, that could be a little biased.
Yeah.
I think maybe a different approach would be to set up a commission of citizens, residents, who don't own businesses on Oak Park Avenue, who would maybe have a little more independent thinking as far as who should get what and how much. And granted, it's just a recommendation from that. It would be a recommendation from that group. It still has to go through, obviously, through the board. I just think you might run into issues.
Well, I just want to let you know, too, that the purpose of combining the committees, there's 4 citizens that will be on economic commercial. That's part of their requirement. So if they're combined, that requirement that you're discussing would be met.
Okay, again, I think to be truly independent, I think a resident commission would be a much, much better approach to at least the initial starting out. And again, I know it has to go to the board at that point for approval. But I believe that would be a better approach to it. $350,000 a year, is that the amount of money that's going to be given out?
That's what I requested. I don't think it'll be approved.
That's what you want.
That's 3 additional police officers.
So it hasn't happened. It hasn't been budgeted.
That's what's being requested. Doesn't mean what's going to be the budget.
Can you get 3 police?
Any more comments? I'd like to make a motion to adjourn the Economic Development and Marketing Committee.
I'll make a motion. Mike, you want a second?
Second.
All in favor?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned.
Okay, we are adjourned. Last one is the Finance Committee. Opening the Finance Committee meeting at 8:05. I'd like to take a roll call.
Mike
Mike?
Pinito,
Trustee
present.
Berg, present.
Trustee Berg, Trustee Mangan, present. Item number 2, I'd like to consider the approval of the minutes of the Special Finance Committee meeting held on October 24, 2017.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Ruth is going to give the monthly report for finance.
Okay, as of October 2017, the general fund sales tax revenues are up about 2.9%, for a total of approximately $200,000 over the same time period last year. Our home rule sales tax sort of mirrors that, with the exception of it's only up 0.4% because the state decided they would charge a 2% admin fee on the distribution of that. I believe that is also currently, there's legislation to challenge that IML is working toward getting it reduced maybe to at least 1%. Not sure whether that's agreed or not, or if it will. Our use tax is up about 2.9%, about $20,000 for the year to date over last year. Income tax is down 5.3%, and I would just call your attention to Brad's comments. He has a rather lengthy comment about it, how the state made some changes in the programming on how they compute the local government distributive share, so that has some bearing on that. Our video gaming revenue still continues to show a positive trend. That is actually up 54% over a year ago, or $60,000 actually. And a couple of other general fund items, just I thought that were worth noting, is our amusement tax, because we're probably near the end of that whole collection season. We're up about $454,000 over the previous year, largely due in part to a lot of concerts out at the Live Nation, or it's not Live Nation, whatever it was this summer. And the police security reimbursements are also up approximately $40,000, which are sort of similarly tied to that event. And our building permits are up $134,000 over the previous year. Other than that, water is up about $463,000, but it's mostly related to New Lenox, increased water sold there. And I would say overall, I think our citizens are still implementing measures of conservation when it comes to usage. So we've noticed that over recent years. And that's probably about all.
Thanks, Ruth.
Care to have any questions?
I appreciate it, thank you. A couple just side notes. The audit is finished. We'll probably go through the process of bringing that out to the committee as well as the board over the next probably 30 to 40 days. The fraud assessment is in its last stage. We think that the fraud assessment, we should have a preliminary report on that, I would think in about 2 to 3 weeks. So that is in the final stages. In fact, they're going to be here tomorrow for the day, and they got some work to do here, and then they got a few things to do on the processes. They have 2 interviews left, which they will finish up in the next week, and then we'll get the preliminary report. And then the last thing is at the last Finance Committee meeting, we were looking at Cavallini's. I had a chance to go out, spend some time with Norm. I had a meeting with Pat, myself, and Norm about 3 weeks ago. Went and spent 2 or 3 days out at the facility in the morning to see the traffic flow. So I got to enjoy a couple mornings from 5:45 in the morning till 8:30, checked it out, kind of seen what was going on there. So we're in the midst of working with Norm right now and trying to come up to some decision-making, which I think we'll have rectified here in the next 30 days. So those are 3 of the updates from the last Finance Committee meeting that we were kind of working on. So,
Could you send us a copy of the audit thing before the final comes out, just so we kind of see what it is?
Yep, I will do
and
that.
where we're at with it.
Okay, any comments from the public? Okay, no comments from the public. Can I adjourn? Get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
So moved. Second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Boy, this gaming's on fire.
Isn't it?
The video game. You know, when I heard my phone went to go stop, the whistle.